Hello, good evening. Welcome to the School of Media and Public Affairs and the George Washington University. We are delighted you were able to join us here at the Jack Morton Auditorium on Facebook Live and Huffington Post Politics. I'm Sylvia Weisbord. I'm Professor and Associate Director of the School of Media and Public Affairs. Here at the school, we study and teach journalism and political communication. We are interested in how journalism works in a changing world. And also we are interested in how democracies inform, connect, and communicate. And also we convene events like the one tonight to discuss matters of public affairs related to the worlds of journalism and politics. We are thrilled to host tonight's event with Huffington Post, a debate among candidates for chair of the Democratic National Committee. Without further ado, now please help me welcome to the stage the moderators of this event, Huffington Post Editor-in-Chief Lydia Polgreen and Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief Ryan Greene.
Thank you, Silvio. The next chairman of the Democratic National Committee will play a crucial role in shaping the party going forward. We're so excited these 7 candidates are joining us tonight, and we look forward to hearing more about their vision for the party. So let's introduce them. First, we've got New Hampshire Democratic Party Chairman Ray Buckley.
South Carolina Democratic Party Chairman Jaime Harrison.
Former Fox News political analyst Jehmu Greene.
The Honorable Tom Perez.
Representative Keith Ellison of Minnesota.
Idaho Democratic Party Executive Director Sally Boynton Brown.
And finally, South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Please be seated. Welcome to the Huffington Post's 2017 DNC debate. We've been running on our site a straw poll, and we can announce some of the initial results right now. We'll keep following it in the days and weeks ahead. In the lead so far, Congressman Ellison, 7,290 votes so far, trailed closely by Mayor Buttigieg with 4,711. The rest of you, not looking so good. But now is your opportunity to turn that around. For those of you watching, you can follow along with the hashtag DNC debate. Each of you will have 30 seconds for brief opening remarks. Start with Chairman Buckley.
Thank you. I'm running for DNC chair for 4 reasons. First, it is important that we address the issue of the nominating process and make sure that it's fair and that we are a neutral party. Second, we need to reform the way the DNC does its business so that it's open and accessible to everybody and that everybody sees that it's transparent. 3, we need to rebuild our grassroots and strengthen our state party so we can actually win elections by having neighbors talking to neighbors. That's how we'll get our message out. And 4th, we need to start winning elections again. I know what to do. I can do it because I've done it as state chair in New Hampshire. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Harrison.
Thank you guys for having me. I talk a little slower because I'm from South Carolina. It's so great to be here. Listen, being a red state chair, I really know what we need in our next DNC chair. We need someone who's a builder, someone who can build up the grassroots, who can build a party. We need someone who is an organizer, someone who can bring our folks together from the grassroots to our leaders in Congress. And we also need a visionary. Someone who has a vision that is looking past just one election cycle and looking for the future. And that's what I bring. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Greene?
We are hours away from the administration that is coming in trying to take away the progress that we have made. As we are healing as a party, we need also to make sure that the American people can look to the Democratic Party to mount a massive resistance. At the helm of the DNC, we need a seasoned organizer and a fierce messenger. We do not need another politician. We have been there and done that. I'm the only candidate on this stage who was trained by the DNC. I'm the only candidate on this stage who worked within that institution, both as a staffer and in leadership positions. I'm the only candidate on this stage who has organized and agitated against the DNC as I built progressive institutions. I'm also the only candidate on this stage who has stood toe-to-toe for 7 years fighting the lies that conservatives tell
Ms.
and
Greene?
with the truth. Thank you.
Ms. Greene. Mr. Perez.
This is a where were you moment. Donald Trump is our president in 48 hours or less. And you know what, folks? We need a leader in the party who's a fighter, who's a proven progressive, who can be a communicator, and who can be a turnaround specialist. That's what I've done all my life. I feel so proud of the fact that growing up in Buffalo, New York, Pell Grant kid, got the opportunity to go to college and all of that. And what I've done all my life is fight. And we need a fighter leading the Democratic Party. We need somebody who can take this culture of the DNC and change it, because we need to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table. That's what I've done at the Department of Labor, the Department of Justice before that, and that's what I hope to do here at the DNC. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman Ellison.
You know, friends, we cannot protect Social Security, a woman's right to choose. We can't protect our economic security unless we win elections. That's the job of the DNC chair, to win elections. Not only have I gotten Democrats elected all over the state of Minnesota, we have no statewide Republicans in Minnesota. It's because we turned up the vote in the 5th Congressional District. I want to take those turnout techniques and bring them all over the country. 50 states, absolutely, but what about 3,143 counties? Let's go turn out the vote. Let's go win. Thank you.
Director Boynton Brown.
You know, I've heard a lot about how we need to be the party of the workers since November 9th. And the reality is that we've stopped talking to the workers. And so we can't be a party of the workers until we return that. I'm a worker. I'm an executive director. I work with the rest of our executive directors. And we need to be a party of the people. We can't do that until we actually return the power to the people and we let them help us make the decisions. I'm here to make sure that we don't just talk about the grassroots, but that we actually come up with a system to pull the grassroots in and help us make decisions together.
Mayor Buttigieg.
Well, thank you. Not a lot of people can say my name right, so they just call me Mayor Pete back home. I'm proud to be a mayor. That's the mentality that I have, and that's the mentality I'd like to bring to the party, the kind of problem solving, from filling in potholes to keeping people safe, that you do day in, day out as a mayor. I also know how to run and win elections in a part of the country where our party has struggled sometimes to connect with voters. I believe even had we won the White House, our party would face some very serious challenges right now. And the solutions to those challenges aren't going to come from Washington on down. They're going to come from our states, our territories, and communities like mine. And I'm excited for the dialogue about just how to do that.
Thank you. I'm going to be the bad cop now. Just a reminder of our ground rules. You have 2 minutes to answer questions, 30 seconds for any rebuttals or follow-ups. We'd like this to be a conversation between the candidates, so we'd encourage you to respond to each other, and we'll be directing follow-ups to you all accordingly. Now, let's get to those questions. So we're going to start with Congressman Ellison. How should Democrats operate in the Trump era? Should you approach him with an open mind, willing to work together on things that are of mutual interest? Or should you be fighting him all the way, which is what the Republicans did with President Obama? Which approach do you favor?
Well, he's already shown us where he stands. I mean, from the very beginning, he put in Steve Bannon, who was a renowned white supremacist and misogynist. And then he proceeded to get somebody in labor who's an anti-labor candidate. I mean, Tom was an awesome labor secretary. This guy is the 100% opposite, 180 degrees the other way. Now they got Ben Carson in the middle of a housing foreclosure, of a rental housing crisis, somebody who's the head of HUD who doesn't know anything about it. So This question of whether we fight back right away or not, that question has been answered. He has already started to institute a right-wing program, so of course we have to fight. But let me just tell you, we did not lose the last election, and the 954 state house seats that we've lost over the last several years simply because of messaging. We need people who are going to grassroots organize, get on the ground, get granular, go to the VFW hall, the union hall, the barbershop, knock on doors. That's how come we were able to increase voter turnout from, say, 150,000 votes in my district to over 250,000, and that's what kept Trump away in Minnesota this time. That's how we have all of our statewide candidates, statewide officers are Democrats in my state. And that's how come we've been able to there are no Republican state legislatures in my district, and there were when I got there. So the real deal is we got to turn out, we got to knock doors, we got to organize, we got to go 50 states, we got to go granular. And I want to tell you, we also got to be unified. And I want to tell you, no matter how this race turns out, I will be honored to stand with all the men and women on this stage because they are all awesome. And I'm going to tell you, we need everybody in this era of Trump. We can't waste nobody. We need the talents of everybody. And I ask all the young and not so young folks out there, seniors, to get ready to organize right now, because that's what it's about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Perez, how would you approach the Trump administration?
Well, Donald Trump is what we call a target-rich environment.
Yeah.
But, you know, what we can't do is go after him every time. You can't meet him tweet for tweet. I think we've got to be surgical. We've really got to understand also that you don't go to a knife fight with a spoon. And we've got to keep fighting back. And what I heard in my travels, I was in Ohio last week, is that message of economic opportunity, jobs, jobs, jobs. That was a promise he made. And he's broken that promise, because look at who he appoints to be the labor secretary. He's the quintessential low-road employer. Right. Look what he's doing with our environment. All of these promises made are not promises kept. When you take health insurance away from people, you prevent them from doing their job. So when we focus our response on you have betrayed what you promised to do, which was jobs and opportunity, right, I think that is the way we move forward. And so that would be my focus. I wouldn't go tweet for tweet, but I think we can hit him between the eyes with a 2x4 and treat him like Mitch McConnell treated Barack Obama.
Ms. Greene, this is a this is a related question. The DNC has not historically been out there in the street organizing protests, but this is a rather ahistorical period. Does the DNC's role need to evolve in a period of opposition like this?
Heck yes, because these are unconventional times. Donald Trump, we know, is an unconventional president. Our electoral work is critical, but it is not going to happen successfully if we are not building the next generation of organizers. Like I said, at 22, the Democratic National Committee taught me to be an organizer. We need to partner with our labor unions to train the next generation of organizers. They are the best out there at organizing, and we need to rebuild those bonds of training. We also have to train the next generation of messengers. We need an army of millennials who are out there talking about the Democratic message, talking about our values, talking about the progress that he wants to take away from us, and we got to give them training, we got to give them resources. We need to build that street fighting force. And at the same time, that force will help us do every single day engagement on the ground, which will then lead us to electoral victory.
Thank you. I want to do a quick show of hands question, then we're going to have one from the audience. Who here agrees that the DNC needs to take part in street fighting or in protests or in organizing direct actions? Thank you. Thank you. We have a question from Amara Manoogian, a graduate student in GW University's Global Communication Program.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to GW. I am from the great state of Michigan. I grew up in a labor union household and am the proud daughter of a female small business owner. In light of the results of the 2014 midterm elections in my state and across the country, as well as our election this past year, and the humanitarian crises in Flint and with Detroit Public Schools, my question is specifically about grassroots organizing at the state and local levels. What would you do specifically, if you are elected chair, to bolster efforts made by local and state parties in states where Democrats continue to lose these critical seats in governor's races, even though it is very clear that Republican policies are crippling the ability of the state to serve its citizens, but our messaging just isn't getting through? Thank you.
Mayor Buttigieg, you take this one.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for the question, because I think it's incredibly important. You know, there are times when I fear that the conversation in the DNC turns to the presidency as though it's the only office that matters. And as I said before, even had we won the presidency, we would be challenged. Why? Because if you look at the state houses, you look at some of these other offices where Republicans have patiently and cleverly built a majority that now allows them to, among other things, jerk around mayors like me when we're trying to actually deliver on the ground for our local government. So making sure that we have not just local government, but local politics going well, that's my bread and butter. That's what I do all day. And not just getting myself reelected, but I was very proud that we were able to get the first African-American woman ever elected city clerk in the city of South Bend. We were able to get Joe Taylor, who's our UAW president, the first African-American in our neighborhood in a while to go to the State House, elected in a marginal district through good old-fashioned grassroots organizing, neighbor to neighbor, member to member in the labor case, and really getting out there. And we've got to recognize that and not from Washington on down, is how we're going to rebuild our party and get the kind of majority that we need. We've got to do it in a way that is true to who we are. I didn't get 80% getting reelected in my city by walking away from my progressive values. I did it by living into them in a way that even those who had different political opinions were able to respect because they could see that it was leading to results. That local accountability is so important. You know, we're all worried about living in this fact-free world we're in right now. The great thing about the local level is you don't get to do that. Either the pothole got filled or it didn't. It's not like proving I wasn't born in Kenya, right? Everybody can tell if I'm doing my job well. And we've got to deliver that same level of local accountability to the national picture, because Trump and all of his folks in the Congress, they've made some pretty lavish promises to the American people. And it's at the kitchen table that we're going to see how those promises are kept or broken. We're going to see by the things they do, and even worse, the things they allow, how it affects real people's lives. And grassroots organizing is how we keep the focus on the actual lived experience of real Americans.
This question is for Director Boynton Brown. What is the biggest mistake the DNC made during the 2016 election cycle, in your opinion?
The biggest mistake that the DNC made, not just in the 2016 election, but in all of the elections that I can think of before that, is not having an overarching identity message that as Democrats we can be proud to stand under. I've been doing work in Idaho, and one of the things that's killing us is the brand that Democrats have, and unfortunately that brand got even more damaged this year. We absolutely have to come together and have a values message that we can deliver no matter what state we live in. For all 57 state parties, we just can't continue to attack the Republicans and not talk about the amazing work that Democrats do. We have so many great leaders in our party that don't get highlighted, and our values are the values of the people. We are the people that lift everybody in America up, and we need to start talking about it in a way that they can hear it, and we haven't been doing that. I am really excited to be running to make sure that we bring a values message back. I am so tired of hearing my own very great friends and neighbors tell me that we just need to tell them more facts. If we walked away learning nothing more from this election, it's that facts don't matter to people anymore. We have to connect with their emotions, we have to connect with their pocketbooks, and we have to connect with their values. We need to start talking about what's right and wrong, because I'm here to tell you that what's happening leading up to this inauguration has been wrong, and we're going to continue to get the opportunity to talk about what's right and wrong. We are the party that stands for people, and we need to remind people of that. Thank you.
Anybody else want to take that with the biggest mistake that DNC made?
Listen, the biggest mistake that the DNC made, I agree with Sally. The problems that we had weren't 2016 problems. Problems that we had were that the fact that we abandoned the 50-state strategy that Howard Dean started when he was chair of the DNC. Now, a lot of people say, well, why do you say that, Jaime? When you look at it, right now, in 2008, we controlled the majority of governorships. We controlled the majority of state houses. We had complete control of the White House, Congress, and the United States Senate. And we lost all of that. We sort of got drunk off of the fact that we were able to elect Barack Obama as president in 2008 and then again in 2012, and lost sight that we needed to focus on state parties. There were state parties in 2006. I was the floor director, the executive director of the House Democratic Caucus.
30-second one.
Oh. Do you want me to finish that one, Mark?
Yeah.
I was the executive director of the House Democratic Caucus in 2006, and we won a seat in Kansas. That wasn't on Rahm Emanuel's list, but we won because of the 50-state strategy. We have to go back to investing in all of our states.
This is, we've had a Democratic president for the last 2 terms, one who's leaving office with extremely high, in some ways historic approval ratings. And yet his appointed successor lost quite, remarkably, to a man whose approval rating is already at 40%. Why did that happen? And why should someone from that administration be part of turning things around? It's a question, obviously, for you, Mr. Perez.
Sure. I think there are really 3 issues that question puts forth. I'm a big believer in data analytics, but data analytics are no substitute for making house calls. You can't show up at a church every 4th October and call that a persuasion strategy. You've got to have organizers on the ground 12 months a year, not just in urban America, although that's critically important. We lost Michigan in part because we underperformed in Wayne County. We lost Wisconsin in part because we underperformed in Milwaukee, but we also underperformed in the rural pockets of those states. And that's why I'm traveling to rural America as well as urban America to listen. We've got to make those house calls, and we've got to do that 12 months a year. We've also got to make sure that our message is that Ted Kennedy at his speech in the Democratic Convention in 1980, he talked about the 2 pillars of the Democratic Party: jobs, economic opportunity, jobs, economic opportunity. And then that tradition of the Democratic Party that we are the party that brings people from the shadows to the sunshine. And we've got to focus on that message. We lost that message. That's what we learned in Ohio. The job focus wasn't there. And finally, we've got to understand the phenomenon that's out there right now, the phenomenon of voter suppression. We have to understand that this is a part of the Republican playbook, and it will continue to be. That's why I've been calling for the establishment of a dedicated voter empowerment and protection unit, because we got to play offense and defense. In Ohio, we saw the purging of voters. We saw the purging of Democrats abroad. In North Carolina, the voter ID law and the purging there worked to suppress turnout. And we have some good people working on it, but we can't go to a knife fight with a spoon. That's why we've got to dramatically enhance our capacity so we can play offense like they're doing in Oregon with vote by mail, and then play defense against these pernicious laws. I think if we do those 3 things, we can make real progress.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Chairman Buckley, I'd love to hear you on the same question. Should someone from the administration that's presided over these losses lead the Democratic Party? And if not, why not?
Well, I think the real challenge is bigger than that real question. And I first off want to say I agree with every single word that everyone has said on this stage. We are unified on 99% of it. The real question today is who has the record of actually doing this? And in New Hampshire, which when I was growing up was a deep red state. It has become a purple state. And in the last 10 years, we've won 11 out of the last 13 statewide races. That's a record I want the DNC to have. And that's not about casting blame on the president or any candidate or anybody else. What it is, it's about getting down there into the grassroots. We were successful in 2014, and we were successful in 2016 in New Hampshire. You look at what happened in those other purple states. We were successful. And I got to tell you, when you look at election time, you work hard for your candidates. This past week, I've never been so proud to be a New Hampshire Democrat, because Maggie Hassan, our new junior U.S. Senator, has been taking to every single one of those nominees. She's been standing out for the disabled children. She's been standing up for reproductive rights. She is a fighter. And we have, for the first time in history, the entire congressional delegation from the state of New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Never before. All female, all fighters, and they're all going to make sure that everybody's voice is heard in Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is another show of hands question. So one of the party's biggest donors, Haim Saban, has said that Congressman Ellison is a quote-unquote anti-Semite and, quote, would be a disaster for the relationship between the Jewish community and the Democratic Party. Please raise your hand if you think Saban should apologize for those remarks. Would anybody like to take the question?
Sure. I think it's important that we realize that this is bigger than our own selves. What we're fighting against with Donald Trump means that we all have to be together. We have all made a commitment that we will not criticize each other, nor will we allow our campaigns to criticize each other, because whoever is elected chair has to be the strongest chair possible. We are only going to succeed by working together. And so whether it's any member of this stage that is elected chair, they need to make sure that they have the ability to function as a strong party. And so attack against one of us, I really think is an attack against all of us. And I think that we stand united with Congressman Ellison.
Congressman Ellison?
I just think everybody should know that Jaime and I did have a phone call. I won't disclose what we talked about, but it was amicable, and we're going to get together and build on our relationship. So I don't want anybody to think that that was the last word. It wasn't, and I think we're on the road to recovery in that regard. So I just wanted people to know that, and I'll let my colleagues address.
Thank you.
Listen, I probably know Keith longer than anybody else on the stage. I remember when he was a freshman member of Congress coming to Washington, D.C., and I was in the whip's office, or the executive director's office. Keith is a great guy who works hard each and every day for his constituents. And I don't believe that there's an anti-Semitic bone in his body, because he's going to fight for the good for everybody. And so we need to, as a party, stop with all of the demonization of each other and focus on the real war right now, and that is against Donald Trump.
30 seconds.
I think I may have been the only one who did not raise my hand, and that's because I think as Democrats, we need to stop falling for these gotcha questions. I think when the media wants to divide us in this way, divide our funders from our potential leaders, we need to just stop taking the bait. So I'm not going to take the bait on that question of division. I'm not going to take the debate on the Sanders versus the Clinton divide. And I would look to all of my candidates up here and say, let's stop taking the debate. We can control the conversation.
Thank you.
That's what Donald Trump did.
Did you want to?
I suspect that if you're here or you're at home, you might be confused. Because if you had watched the Republican primary debates, there was chair throwing, there was a contest about hand size, and other things. And I'm here to tell you that you're not going to see that, because we have 36 hours, folks, 36 hours. And I know it from where I'm at now, because we fought hard to lift wages for workers. We fought hard to make working conditions safer. We fought harder to make retirement security a reality for folks. And that is at stake. Not only that, but so many other things. A woman's right to choose, climate change. We got a bunch of billionaire boys entering the cabinet. That's where our target must be, because this is a where were you moment. And that is why you will see us talking about our vision. And among the family, the voters will choose in February which sibling will lead the family, and we will then move forward as a family.
We have another audience question. This one comes from NARAL President Elise Hogue, who had also considered a bid for DNC chair, but is not up on the stage.
Hi, Hi, everyone. It's great to see you guys up there, and I love the tone of this debate. I've told all of you I'm with whoever wins, and we're here to serve. My question is, all of you have talked about your desire to lead a 50-state strategy as coined by Governor Howard Dean, who I believe is in the audience tonight as well. And yet, the reality is, of course, we live in a resource-constrained environment, and we have some real short-term needs, most acutely to win back state legislatures, evaluate which ones are within reach in 2018 and 2020, so we're in a position of power when it comes time for redistricting. How will you balance your promise to support all 50 states with that overwhelming priority for the party? Thank you.
Chairman Harrison, why don't you kick us off?
Listen, we were in a resource-constrained time in 2004 when Howard Dean took over the DNC, and yet he made the concerted effort and choice to invest in the states instead of just giving a blank check to the DCCC and the DSCC to work on targeted campaigns. It is so important. The foundation of our party are state parties, every single one of them. You know, right now in Vermont, in Massachusetts, in Maryland, quote-unquote blue states, what do they all have in common? Republican governors. It is because the Republicans don't give up on any state. What we, for some odd reason, Democrats only want to concentrate on the battleground states. Howard Dean didn't do that. And as a result, we took back control of the House of Representatives. We took back the control of the Senate, and eventually even got 60 votes in the U.S. Senate. We have to go back to that mentality. We have to invest in our state parties once again. In South Carolina, where I'm the chair, it's hard. Every day when you're fighting against Nikki Haley and the likes of Tim Scott and Jim DeMint, each and every day doing that. And we're doing great things in South Carolina, but we keep hitting up against this ceiling. And it's the ceiling because we don't have a partner in Washington, D.C. that will invest in us. And not just money, but the time, the energy, the effort, the training that we need in order to break out. Redistricting. We are gerrymandered to death. And, you know, South Carolina is a real Christian state, and I say this quite often back home. If Jesus Christ came back and ran in some of these districts, he could not win if he ran as a Democrat. But if the DNC was our partner, working with us to fight back against these districts, we could make ends meet. It was great to have Barack Obama as a president and to have the Affordable Care Act passed. But when you don't have the governor and you don't have a legislature that will approve Medicaid expansion, then your people still suffer. That is why we have to go back to a 50-state strategy. There are Democrats in every one of these states and abroad, and we need to make sure they have the resources and the technology in order to win.
Thank you, Chairman.
I agree with everything Jamie Harrison just said, but let me just tell you, here's the how you do 50 states. Here's the how. There are people in every single county, every single precinct of this whole country who are dying to get involved and active. The DNC should be the vehicle that says, we are your place of choice to get involved. So sign up, come to a house party, come to a meetup in your community, because Democrats are organizing. We are writing letters to the editor. We are getting ready to start a march or a demonstration. And, you know, the DNC can help coordinate all of that. I imagine that the DNC could organize Democratic lawyers and legal workers all over the country to help protect the vote. As Tom Perez accurately said, we have got to protect the vote every single place. But the DNC doesn't need to just rely on itself. We need to use everybody's talent.
There's a quick follow-up to that, and then I want to hear from Director Boynton Brown. Both you and Senator Bernie Sanders, who has endorsed you, have huge lists of these activists, the kinds that you're talking about. Would you commit to get him to try to use those lists to benefit the DNC?
Talking about me?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to call upon everybody to give all the resources they have to organize everybody. We are in an emergency situation. That's what you hear all of us saying, and everybody has to give up what they have to maximize turnout and agency and organization. Thank you.
I just would like to hear a perspective from a deep red state, so let's hear from Director Boynton Brown on this question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when we ask that question, we're actually asking the wrong question. 50% of America didn't show up to vote on Election Day. That means there is a ton of people out there who are not interested in what we have to say, and we need to figure out why. When we talk about resources, it shouldn't be when we're trying to envision what the future is going to look like. Yeah, standing in this place where we just lost seats, we don't have the resources. What I'm suggesting is that we fundamentally remake the DNC and remake the Democratic Party by talking to the people of our country so that we have more people involved, so that more people actually want to invest in the DNC. I unfortunately have conversations every day with folks who say, I wouldn't give the DNC money. They'll give Idaho money because I've proven I'm a service organization and it's going to be worth their while.
Thank you, Director.
Mr. Perez and then Mr. Buckley.
2 quick points. We need to think long term. That's what the Republicans did 20 years ago. They understood that when you make long-term investments in organizing, when you make long-term investments in field, when you make long-term investments in candidate recruitment, it pays dividends, and we see that. Secondly, we need to deploy every member of the DNC and others around a strategy of joint fundraising. We've got mayors who I call who say, Tom, I've never been asked to help fundraise, and I've got supporters who can help me. So we can grow our base by taking a look at the small donor success of Senator Sanders, talking to other members like the mayor and others, and say, hey, help us out. And then organizing our fundraising around our initiatives. When you're talking to a donor, they're wondering, what's your ROI? What am I going to get for this? When we talk about, you're going to get voter protection, you're going to get candidate recruitment, you're going to get long-term thinking, then they're going to start seeing that ROI, and then they'll donate even more.
Thank you. Elise, your question was how we're going to pay for it, because it was premised that we don't have a lot of money. Well, the reality is that we have a lot of money, and it's making a lot of corporate media very rich, and a lot of consultants that live within this beltway very rich, because they all get a kickback every time you run a TV ad. Well, we've realized that ads aren't what it is worth anything anymore. I talked about Maggie Hassan, her U.S. Senate race just a couple weeks ago. $70 million was spent in New Hampshire. Of that, of the D.C. outside help that came in, $250,000 went towards our coordinated campaign.
Okay.
We've got to, I'm not saying I want 50% of that 70 million. I'm not saying even 25%, even 10%, but even 5%. $3.5 million, you know what that would have done? That would have given us a Democratic legislature. If we had those sorts of resources, it's about standing up to the folks in D.C. going, hell no, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know what you're doing, I'm sick of making you all rich.
Chairman.
Give us the money and we'll build the field operation, we'll start winning elections again.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Chairman Buckley.
And Mr. Buttigieg, to her point, 2018 is around the corner of the census redistricting. How much of a priority is that compared to the 50-state strategy?
Sure. First, I can't miss the opportunity, at least just to thank you. I live in Mike Pence's Indiana, which is the epicenter of so many of the politically motivated restrictions on women's health care. So what you do really makes a difference, even in deep red territory like Indiana. In terms of redistricting, hugely important, of course, and we need to make sure that the DNC is lashed up well with the emerging National Democratic Redistricting Committee. Because, again, what the other side figured out very quick to our disadvantage over the course of many years was the way to lay the groundwork so that everything from the state houses, like in the state where I live, work, and organize, to the Congress are affected by the kinds of redistricting that they have locked in. And you want to talk about rigged elections. They weren't rigged in the way Donald Trump said they were rigged. But who can look at the way that our districts are drawn right now, where the politicians choose their voters instead of the other way around, and say that those are free and fair elections?
So this is going to be a bit of a lightning round. We're going to start with you, Chairman Buckley. So Republicans have often been credited with message discipline and the ability to talk about really complex policies in a very simple, emotional way. In 10 words or less, what's the message on why Democrats oppose Trump's agenda for America?
Because our message is about hope and opportunity, and that's not what his message is for. His message about, is about negativity.
Well, listen, Donald Trump is Donald Trump, and we need someone who is focused on everybody else.
This president is prepared to roll back the progress we have achieved, not just in the last 8 years, but as a nation, on civil rights, on women's rights, on health care. And we, as a country, as we watch women stand up, also need to follow their lead and resist this administration.
Opportunity is our DNA in the United States. Our diversity is our greatest strength. And Donald Trump is anathema to both.
Donald Trump is for the big money. The Democrats are for the many. We've got to fight for the many.
Democrats are absolutely the only party that's going to save our democracy and protect our freedoms. They're being taken away from us, and we absolutely have to stop that right now. We need to stand up for the people and return the power to the people of America.
Freedom, fairness, families, future. I got 6 left. Lives depend on the choices that are made here.
Thank you.
Well, the editor in me is knocking off points for some of you.
Congressman Ellison, you've been chairman and a leader of the Congressional Progressive Caucus for a long time now. But tell us, though, what has the CPC accomplished while you've been there?
Oh, I'm really proud of the Progressive Caucus's work. You know, when we started the Progressive Caucus, Raul Grijalva and I, we really kind of just got together and discussed issues of common concern. But since we've gotten in there, we have worked actually with the Obama administration to put forth a good employers, model employer executive order. We had an executive order that called for an increase in pay to people who work for federal contractors. We've gone out on the picket lines and walked picket lines with workers fighting for good jobs. In fact, we were there just a few days ago. We've gone all across the country to fight with low-wage workers, and we have given a platform to help Democrats get elected. We're so proud of getting Democrats elected like Pramila Jayapal, Jaime Raskin. We just helped get in awesome Democrats all over this country with a progressive agenda who are bold and ready to fight back. So if it has to do with using the administration to push an agenda, we got the House Democratic Party to put a transactions tax into its budget, something that the national nurses help work with us on. They call it the Robin Hood tax. And so the thing is that we've been wildly effective, nothing but higher heights, and I think the Progressive Caucus is going to have even more important work to do. Right now, we've already begun recruiting candidates. If you want to run for Congress and you want the endorsement of the Progressive Caucus, give us a call. We want to work with you. We want to talk with you because we believe that in order to have progressive legislation, you got to have progressives in Congress.
Let me phrase it slightly differently. There's a perception that the Freedom Caucus kind of drives the agenda of House Republicans.
Yeah.
That perception does not exist on the Democratic side. Why do you think that is? Or
because the Progressive Caucus is a caucus that understands that we all got to work together, and then the Freedom Caucus actually turns on other elements of the Republican caucus. These people helped shut down the government for 16 days. But it is the Progressive Caucus that believes we've got to extend health care. We've got to protect Social Security. We've got to call into question the drone war and help the president close down Gitmo. And so we've been on the forefront of that, whether it's people like Jan Schakowsky, who is fighting for seniors, making sure that our seniors know that they're never, ever out of our thoughts, and we will never allow them to cut Social Security, or whether it's folks like Hank Johnson, who are pushing to make sure we have criminal justice reform and making sure that the administration of justice does not fall heavier on African-American and Latino citizens. The Progressive Caucus membership is slaying every single day. Super proud of it.
Thank you.
And we're moving the agenda.
Thank you.
Just a quick show of hands. Who on this stage identifies as a progressive?
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Please.
So
you got 30 seconds.
Progressive to me means that we're moving forward. So I think everybody in the Democratic Party wants to move forward. We have a platform that we came together on just 6 months ago that all of the people in our party, right, the representation to our convention agreed on. So I don't think the argument is, are we moderate or are we progressive? I think the conversation is, how do we move forward and make sure we lose not a single person from our party? How do we figure out how to heal and reconcile and go forward together?
Ms. Greene?
I think all of the things that Congressman Ellison laid out are victories. And we as Democrats have not, and as progressives, we're all the same, we've not celebrated our victories. For the last 8 years, we've allowed conservatives to define what we have accomplished as being wrong and against our economic values. And we have to stop that. To your question, Elise, because I think I was the only one who on the stage did not get to answer. First, thank you. The fight you have ahead, we all need to hold arms and give whatever resources are necessary for this fight to protect our health decisions. But we also need to stop saying that we are resource constrained. We had more money than Donald Trump, and he still won. It is not just about the resources. It is about redistributing in a smart way. We need to invest in red states where our base is growing, even if the electoral impact is not immediate. If we had given money to Georgia and Arizona and even my home state of Texas, earlier and more, what could we have accomplished in 2016? We have to be smarter with our investments, but we do not have to stop celebrating our victories, and we have to stop taking away the passion and energy that 3 million more Democrats voted for. We have to celebrate that as well.
Mr. Perez?
I had the privilege of working for Barack Obama and Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy taught me that progressives understand that they're principled and passionate, and then they get things done. We have a substantial rebuilding that we have to do here at the DNC. And we need someone, everybody has progressive vision, but we have to make sure we look at who has a track record of getting things done. That's what, at the Department of Labor, we had a turnaround job at the Department of Labor. Before that, at the Department of Justice, in the Civil Rights Division, the Bush administration decimated it. And we had a turnaround job. And that's what I was able to do. And I think the most important thing I learned from it is good leaders are good listeners. And the most important thing I've learned from listening to DNC members, as well as to rank and file Democrats, is that the DNC hasn't been a good enough listener. Because I know that most of the stuff we've accomplished at DOL and the Justice Department before it wasn't my idea. I've seldom had an original idea in my life. And if we're good listeners, we can get a lot done. And I think we need to do more listening as a party.
Mayor Buttigieg?
Just briefly, I wanted to address, we're all progressive. I wanted to address what I think might be the question beneath the question, because I fear that a false choice is being laid at our feet, that there's a portrayal of this competition for chair as though it were a choice, as though it were a choice between one wing of the party and another, as though it would be a defeat for some Democrats and a victory for others. That presentation is unfair to the candidates who are here. We need to transcend that, get past that, and be united. It's one of the reasons I think a fresh start is what our party needs right now.
Thank you, Mr.
So at the age of 29, I became the first African-American to be the floor director for the Majority Whip's office. And my job every day was to get 218 votes to pass legislation. I only had a 233-seat majority, 15 folks that we could lose. We had progressives, we had blue dogs, we had New Dems, and everything in between. And in the end of the day, when I looked up on that board, all I saw were Democrats and Republicans. If we get caught up in this battle about progressives and blue dogs and what have you, and we start beating up on each other, somebody wins the battle, but we all lose the war. It needs to be about respecting the diversity of our party, regardless of the region, regardless of the ethnicity, regardless of the religion, respecting the diversity of our party and the diversity of the experiences. And that's what we need in the next DNC chair.
Thank you, Chairman Harrison. Well, the Republican Party seems pretty divided, and they just won the presidential election, so make of that what you will. So this is a question for Mr. Perez. The broad assumption is that you jumped into this race at the behest of President Obama, giving his record with regard to party building. Is that implicit endorsement helping or hurting you with voting members of the DNC?
Well, let me tell you why I jumped into this race. I've been a fighter all my life, and at every fork in the road, I've asked myself the question, how can I help the most people in the broadest way possible, people who are struggling? Because my parents taught me that if you want to get to heaven, you better have letters of reference from poor people and folks living in the shadows. And every time in my life, whether it was fighting civil rights laws, enforcing civil rights laws at the Justice Department, organizing in local government to build one of the strongest immigrant-serving nonprofits in the Mid-Atlantic region, whether it was working at the Department of Labor to expand opportunity, that's the question that I've asked. I'm proud as hell to have worked for Barack Obama. I think he's going to go down as one of the most consequential presidents in American history. And I've learned a lot from him. And I've learned a lot from every single experience. And what I've learned in this race is that we have a substantial rebuilding job. We've not only got to fight Donald Trump and take that fight to him, and we've not only got to organize in all 50 states and the territories, we've not only got to have aggressive strategic communication, we've got to change the culture of the organization. And that's what I've been about in every job I've had, changing the culture. When people feel included, people get things done. And that's what we've been able to do at every single job. And so the reason I got in this race is because this is a where were you moment in our nation's journey to form a more perfect union. Everything I fought for in my life is at stake with Donald Trump in the White House. I couldn't sit it out. That's why I got in this race. And I hope that, you know, at the end of the day, we're going to fight together as Democrats, because you know what? I truly believe that e pluribus unum is who we are. And I truly believe our message of economic opportunity and job creation is the right message. And that is why I got in this race.
Thank you. Sure. Mayor Buttigieg, and then we'll have opportunity for others to respond to this. This is a question, a version of which we got hundreds of times. This particular one comes from on Twitter from Patriots Fan 1057. So congratulations to them. It's how will you ensure that all 2020 presidential Democratic candidates are treated fairly by the DNC?
If we don't want to relive 2016, then we've got to make sure that the process for presidential nomination in our party is so clearly fair and impartial, so free of any perception, let alone reality, that there was a thumb on the scale, that it is absolutely beyond reproach. How do we do that? Well, if you have more time to go to PeteForDNC.com and read my platform, you can see some of what I have in mind. But the bottom line is that we've got to make sure, first of all, that the process is right. Secondly, that the way we communicate about the process is inclusive. This is a Democratic Party. It's big D, but it's also got to be small d. The whole idea of our party is to empower different people, new voices. It's part of what I'm doing, getting in this race, and I know I'm not the most famous name here, but the whole beauty of our system and our process is it invites new people into it. And we're going to have to do that if we want to show that we're not a party that's driven by Washington, that the Democratic Party doesn't take its instructions from the mothership. It comes from the states, from the communities. Now, every single one of us up here is going to say all the right things on this question and on the idea that we've got to rebuild from our states and our communities up. I think the only question is which of us is best equipped to do it. And I would argue that the experience that I have, and maybe in a way the experience that I don't have, as somebody who's a little newer on the scene from the middle of the country, somebody who's not from a federal perspective, is what we need in order to structure and drive those kinds of processes. We can and should win every time. But we've got to come out of it united. We've got to come out of it true to the values that make us all Democrats and make us a big tent party. And we've got to demonstrate how those values hit home in people's everyday, real lives. These issues are personal for me. You know, my life is literally on the line. I'm in the individual ready reserve. A reckless president could order me back to war tomorrow. This is life and death stuff. And we've got to make sure we're talking in terms of that, not talking about the politicians and their antics as though they were what really mattered. If we're talking about them, people in my neck of the woods will be saying, okay, great, but who's talking about me? The way we get the spotlight back onto the issues that matter is to make sure we have the cleanest, fairest nominating process that the country's ever seen.
There's three really simple answers to this. I think all of us agree the Unity Commission needs to get together and they need to make decisions about what our bylaws and our process needs to look like. But I think I'm already hearing names, as you all are, about who's going to run in 2020. And the reality is 2020 is 4 years away, and we've got 2 elections to win before then. And I say 2, actually 3, because we've got municipal elections that we have to win because we need more city council and school board and mayors. And The third thing is that we also have to make sure that we have policies in place at the DNC. So it's not just bylaws, but that the staff at the DNC is being set up in a fair way so that they know exactly what they're going to be providing and not providing to candidates from the very beginning, which means now, today, as soon as we start, so that we're not giving resources to candidates tomorrow that are unfair, so that by the time we get to 2019, they already have an unfair advantage.
Thank you, Director.
Mr. Buckley.
There's no way I can answer this in 30 seconds. Let me tell you, this is really my wheel well. This is what I am very passionate about. I was the chair of the New Hampshire Democratic Party during the 2008 contest and the 2016. And there's not one whiff that there was a single thumbprint on any scale in either contest. In fact, when the New Hampshire Republican, the New Hampshire Secretary of State said that Bernie Sanders wasn't a Democrat and couldn't appear on the ballot, I took it to the Ballot Law Commission, and I went with him to make sure that he appeared on the ballot. That's what a neutral state party chair does. We've got to do a couple things. First, superdelegates. We need to make sure that the end result, the delegations, represent the actual votes of the people in the state, whether it's through a primary or through a caucus. Two, the scheduling of the debates should not be the purview of just simply the national chair. It needs to be going to the executive committee that's included. Three, we need to make sure that we never sign a joint fundraising agreement ever again with a candidate involved in a primary. I think that there are a number of issues. rayfordnc.com, you can take a look at it, but this is what I am extraordinarily passionate about. I've done it. I've shown what a fair party can do, and I can do that in 2020.
Chairman Harrison?
I agree with everything that Ray said. Honestly, I think Ray and I have spent a lot of time on presidential politics because he is the first primary state, and we follow up with the first in the South primary. And in looking on my Facebook today, I'm looking at old pictures from the debate that we had in Charleston, South Carolina, with all of our three candidates. It is so important that we get this right. But one of the things that is also equally important is the process in which you all participate in the primary selection, and to make sure that we almost take a civics lesson so people understand the process. Because a lot of the frustration that came out of this primary was that people didn't understand the rules and how things were conducted and should be conducted, and how the DNC applies itself. And so we need to make sure that we do a better job of educating the populace about how that process works.
Thank you, Chairman.
So, given what Chairman Buckley, go ahead, Congressman Ellison.
I agree with what everybody said. I'd also say that I think one of the things the DNC chair absolutely must do is set a cultural tone that is absolutely respectful of everyone who is running. And we have got to communicate the idea to every staff member that what you write in an email could well end up being a headline. And so you have got to be scrupulously fair to everyone, because you might not think anyone is watching, but probably someone is. So I will set that tone and be very clear that we are serving the American people and the Democratic rank and file. So act like that. Thank you.
And given what Chairman Buckley said about debates and fundraising, what Congressman Ellison said about the tone of the emails, another show of hands question: who here believes that the DNC did unfairly put its thumb on the scale during the 2016 primary?
That's a gotcha question I'm not going to answer.
Thank you.
You know, as everybody has said, we need a leader who has earned the trust of everyone. And you need the two T's, trust and transparency. You set out the rules in advance, and you follow the rules. And when there is not transparency, then potentially, in fact, there were violations or breaches, or even if there weren't, there are perceptions. And when you don't have transparency, you run into problems. And that is not an issue that's limited at the DNC to the issue of how elections are conducted. I've heard this time and time again in my outreach to members, that it's a cabal. I don't know what's going on. I show up at meetings and I'm given an agenda. I'm given 2 minutes to review the resolution. We've got to open that up and create that culture of inclusion. I saw that at the Department of Labor and at the Department of Justice before it. These are fixable problems, but they require relentless attention at the top and a relentless commitment to inclusion, building a big table so that everybody has skin in the game and everyone has opportunity to weigh in. And when you have that transparency, you build that trust.
Thank you. Chairman Buckley, how do you feel about caucuses? Should they be abolished or should they be expanded?
Thank you for that wonderful question.
I picked it out special for you.
Appreciate it. The issue with caucuses, in my opinion, is the lack of uniformity of who gets to participate in them, how they're structured, the timing, the results. Some states, anyone can participate. Some states, it's just Democrats, and you had to have been a registered Democrat for a month and a half before you got to go in there. Sometimes it's a 10-minute process. Sometimes it's an entire day. Sometimes it's a 4 or 5 step process. Remember in 08, the Texas 2-step process. It didn't make any sense to anybody outside of Texas. Nobody, the media, the campaigns, nobody understood what was going on. I think that the Unity Commission is going to take a look at streamlining them so that the important thing with caucuses, we have to find ways to make sure that more and more people are able to participate. And the other thing I want to talk about caucuses is, as we saw that thousands of new people were going to be participating in these caucuses and our state parties were being overrun, I called the DNC and I said, these state parties need help. They don't have enough staff. Some of these state parties only had 2 or 3 staffers at best. They can't do this. These are thousands and thousands of people coming in. They have to be processed, be treated with respect, and make sure that their voice is being heard. And I was told by the DNC, that's not our problem. That's not the way I would conduct the DNC as chair. This is about all of us being in together. So working with the caucuses, making sure as many people as possible can participate, that they are streamlined so that the rules are understandable both by the voters, but also by the media, so they're able to articulate what it is and to make sure that it's as fair as possible.
Congressman Ellison, would you like to?
Well, you know, I come from a caucus state. And, you know, in Minnesota, folks like their caucuses. But I do agree with Ray. There has to be some standardization. But even that has to be approached by a DNC chair who is going to get folks together and come up with some rules that are replicable, that everybody can live with, and that will endow trust in the system. So I would say that it's not for the DNC chair to say no caucuses, but it is the proper role of the DNC chair to pull people together who want to have their caucuses and say, how can we make these things more equitable, more fair, more inclusive? In fact, caucuses have their benefits. I mean, the truth is you can come on an evening with your neighbor, you can sit there all evening, you can go over resolutions, and actually caucus resolutions have a way of helping to shape the platform ultimately, so there are real benefits to caucuses, but, you know, a caucus should be a caucus should be a caucus. Thank you.
Mr. Harrison?
Yeah, this is, again, one of those civics lessons. So a lot of folks left the primary thinking, well, the DNC needs to change this caucus state or needs to change their primary. Guys, DNC doesn't have the power to do that. That's within the states and the state legislatures. It's about who pays for the actual election. South Carolina used to be a caucus state, but then we transferred them to our primary state. And in the end of the day, we had to pay for the primary. The party had to pay for the primary. I was able to work with my Republican counterpart to get it so that the state paid for it, but that is part of the process that determines how we go about doing these things. And so sometimes the DNC doesn't have the control to make the determination of what happens in this state or what happens in that state. We can only try to influence and push, but that is a part of the civics lesson that we all need to know about how this process works.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Greene?
I just want to say that I know caucuses go into late at night. There are many Democrats who don't have the ability, the capacity to be in a room for many hours late at night. And I understand the role that caucuses have played, and I also understand that the DNC does not make those decisions. But as Democrats, we certainly, as the party that believes in science, we are the party of innovation, and we have to start looking at ways to innovate how we elect our nominees. And I think we have to really put on the table who are those communities that cannot participate in these caucuses, such as my mom. When she was a nurse working late nights, she couldn't participate, and we have to, as leaders in the party, really put that on the table.
Mr. Perez?
Yeah, I was going to say, I look forward to the work of the Unity Commission, and Jaime did give a very accurate description of the situation. But my main memory, and I hope regardless of both the Unity Commission and everyone else, you shouldn't have to win the boss lottery to be able to go to a caucus. And I met folks who were shift workers, and the caucus came during their shift, and they couldn't go. That just isn't fair. And as we think about again, respecting the will of states to move forward, I hope we can figure out a way to integrate the basic notion that you just shouldn't have to win the boss lottery. Because if you were in Nevada, frankly, if you won the boss lottery at one hotel, you could vote and still get paid. You didn't have to clock out. If you worked at another casino, you couldn't. That ain't fair.
Thank you, Ms. Boynton Brown.
I think it's really important that we don't always look at things as either or. I feel like our party has, I don't know, the really bad habit of doing that. There are so many things that can be both and I think this is one of them. The reality is that caucuses, especially in red rural states, are some of the only times that Democrats get to come together and see each other. And every single presidential year, I hear people say, oh my gosh, I met, 5 of my neighbors I never would have guessed were Democrats. That's really, really important. So I agree that we need to look at access, because access is the thing that we are most about. There are a lot of rules when you actually, I spent all of my time trying to guide caucus states through this. And there's an amazing plethora of rules out there that allow for a higher level of access. If the DNC was actually taking a role in the guidance of this, then we could craft much better plans that would solve the access issue and allow us to have caucuses.
Thank you, Director.
Ms. Greene, a follow-up on that. What about superdelegates? What's the point of superdelegates anymore? And what do you hear from DNC members about superdelegates?
I'm going to get to superdelegates, but just to your point, Sally, if a caucus is the only time that Democrats get together, then clearly that party is not doing everyday engagement. So there's something that's broken and something that needs to be fixed. And that's the answer that hopefully the next leadership of the Democratic National Committee is going to help provide states with the resources to do. 2 superdelegates. Back to exactly what I just said. We are the party of innovation. It is way past time, and I know everyone up here will point to the Unity Commission. How many people in the audience understand in detail what's happening in the Unity Commission and who's on it? Thank you. We have to start speaking in language and providing details and educating people on how our party works. And you know what? Yes, we need to recognize those activists and elected officials who have put their blood, sweat, and tears into the party. And we need to make sure that new people coming into the party aren't having to compete for positions to become a delegate. But I think it is way past time, just like many people in this room probably don't have a landline, that we make a tough decision on superdelegates. We find a way to recognize the leadership of elected officials, recognize the leadership of those institutional activists, but we also find a way to move past the old school.
I wish that it was just as easy in rural areas as just making sure that we went door to door and talked to people. There are people in our communities that will only come out during a presidential year. So we work our tail off to make sure that we're in contact with people in Idaho with 4 staff and a ton of volunteers. But there are just some people, a lot of people, unfortunately, that only pay attention in presidential years, and that's really, really tough. I will also say that the Unity Commission is a group that was put together during the convention to try to negotiate out how we move forward, because there were so many people that wanted the rules to change at convention, and that wasn't something that was going to be allowed for a lot of different reasons. And so you have Sanders people and Hillary people, and whoever becomes chair gets to choose 3 people. I've promised to get that commission to work the first week that I come into office, because I think that that work's entirely too important to wait any longer than that. I also think, based especially on what I've heard, that we need to expand the scope of their work, because they really specifically were crafted to deal with the superdelegate issue, not necessarily some of the issues that we've talked about.
Thank you, Director. Mayor Buttigieg?
Just give a little insight on how I would handle inclusion and accountability in the party. I want to share a little bit about how we do it in the city. So some of it's high tech, like the tool that allowed us to put every penny of how our $300 million line item budget is spent every year online. First state to have an online checkbook. Some of it's low tech. We go and have a mayor's night out every month or two. I set up a card table at a school somewhere, make all my department heads come so that somebody can sit across the table from me. And if she has a sewer issue that we can fix, we do it on the spot. We've got to be using all of the above when it comes to how we include people and how we engage them. High tech, low tech, and everything in between. But as a mayor, as a working mayor, I'm very comfortable with transparency and accountability because it's my day-to-day. You could look up, you could ask to see every email between me and my chief of staff. Yesterday, some super PAC's probably doing it right now that I said it, on the Republican side. I am accustomed to that level of accountability and transparency, and I want to bring that same spirit to the DNC.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If I could throw you guys back to the primary race, you would go on, watch a TV show, CNN, whatever, MSNBC, and you see the delegate count, and sometimes that count would be higher or lower for one primary candidate than another based on the superdelegates. And a lot of people felt like, wait a minute, the superdelegates should not determine the outcome. It should be the rank and file Democrats who do that. And so, as Sally correctly identified, people came together in unity to try to come up with a solution. And the proposal is to look at something that would say we want to recognize that there are folks who put in an inordinate amount of work, who've been around, who've earned the trust of their colleagues, but should not be able to simply determine an outcome for a presidential candidate. I think the Unity Commission is important. I think that the chair should strive to come up with cooperative solutions. Unity is one of those things that everybody talks about, but it's hard work to achieve unity. And the Unity Commission, I think, is something all of us need to pay a lot of attention to, because after this race is over, the Unity Commission work is going to begin, and we need your input on how we go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Buckley.
Thank you. I actually tackled this issue 8 years ago. After the 2008 election, the president very much wanted the DNC to protect it. But what many of you might not know is that the superdelegates, half of which are the membership of the DNC. And so we didn't have the sort of dialogue that we needed, and we didn't come up with some of the innovative solutions. Right now, there's a concept out there that I think is going to work. But the bottom line is how I started off at the beginning, is that the superdelegates never have the opportunity to veto the vote of the people. That the end result, whatever happens in that state, it has to reflect the vote of the state in the primary or the caucus. So the superdelegates would be put in and counted as a regular delegate in the allotment. And if you are a superdelegate who chooses not to endorse, then you get you get a floor pass and a seat and you don't have to be part of it.
Thank you.
But in no situation should the superdelegates be able to veto the vote of the people.
Chairman, thank you. We had an audience question from a young man named Jack Connolly. Unfortunately, Mr. Connolly couldn't be here, but I really liked his question so much.
Is he here?
He is here.
He was late,
He made
Jack.
it. Oh, great. Okay. Terrific.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks for showing up.
So, as some of you already mentioned, 2016 was the first election without the full protections of the Voting Rights Act. So, coming back to that, my question was, as DNC chair, what will you do to encourage voter registration and mobilization, and then protect voting rights and fight voter suppression?
Why don't we start with Congressman Ellison?
Well, let me tell you what I did when the Republicans in 2012 tried to pass a restrictive voter ID law. You know, it was March when Mary Kiffmeyer introduced that legislation. I was a member of Congress. We devoted our whole campaign to defeating photo ID, and it was polling at 80% when she dropped that bill in. And let me tell you, man, people told us, Democrats told us, you know, we're with you, but, you know, we just can't beat it because they're just polling too high. Maybe we'll try to beat them in court. I said, yeah, let's beat them in court, but we don't care about, you know, what the odds are. We care about what's right and wrong. So we went to work, and and knocked those numbers down. By summer, we had more people getting involved, and we ended up winning that election. We defeated photo ID at the polls across Minnesota, starting in the 5th Congressional District. And that is one of the ways we've got to attack them. Now, I agree. We have got to mobilize. The DNC should be at the very forefront of attacking voter suppression. You know, you guys, Republicans, look at voter suppression as a key strategy to win elections, and yet Democrats have got to understand voter expansion as a key way for us to win elections. We win when people vote. They win when people don't. And so our goal needs to be get folks out to vote. That means we got to turn on during the off year. We got to knock doors all the time. We got to have our lawyers ready to go after any infringement upon any American's right to vote. And we've got to play this all year round. So I love your question. It really is where we have to take it. We have to fight against voter suppression in the courts and at the ballot box. It can be done. We've done it in Minnesota, and I'm very proud of that. Thank you.
Chairman Harris, in 30 seconds.
If anybody knows anything about voter suppression, just live in South Carolina. We got a history of it. Listen, as Democrats, we got to move from being reactive and start being proactive. One of the things that killed me was the fact. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you. One of the things that killed me is when we had 60 votes in the Senate, that we as Democrats didn't take the opportunity to really drive down the most progressive voting rights in the country. We didn't do that. We didn't take advantage of that opportunity. So we need to then now, in those states in which we do control the governorships in the legislature, let's use those as laboratories for how we have real voting reform. So the next time that the American people give us 60 votes in the Senate, the next time we get control of the White House and Congress, we can really change voting in this country. The DNC has to lead that effort, but we have to be more proactive than reactive.
Thank you.
One of the saddest days of my tenure at the Department of Justice was when we lost that case. So because I took on Texas, we took on South Carolina, we took on North Carolina, we took on so many states. And if you look at my platform, this is a centerpiece because I've been in these battles. We've got to play offense and defense. Out in Oregon, vote by mail, they're increasing turnout. Same-day registration. Universal voter registration. When you turn 18, you ought to be automatically registered. And then playing defense. Ohio, a big part of the problem in Ohio this recent cycle, their Secretary of State's a full employment act for civil rights lawyers because the voter purge that took place there. And the challenge is that we often win those cases like we did in North Carolina, but we win them too late. And so you win the battle and you lose the war because by the time you find the voters, it's too late. And that's why we got to stop fighting. We can't, do these knife fights with a spoon. And that's why I've called for in my platform the dramatic expansion of our ability to play both offense and defense. The DNC needs to be front and center. We've got good people doing it, but we need more.
Thank you, Mr. President.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, please.
I think that one of the most important things that we need to do is take a playbook out of the Republican Party and that's start looking at our high schools. I had a conversation with high school Democrats of America the other day, and they've been forgotten on almost every front. The Republicans start young, and we need to start young. We need to have civics engagement courses. We need to make sure that we're pulling people into our party at a very early age. And then obviously I agree with everything that's been said up here as well. But we've got to get to our high school kids.
Ms. Greene?
There's a lot of agreement on this stage, and I think that's great. But I also know I'm the only person on this stage who has actually implemented voter expansion in a very significant way. At Rock the Vote, I was leading the organization when we took on online voter registration, and in our first year of online voter registration, registered over 1 million young people to vote. We as Democrats need to understand one thing on this issue. We've lost the fight when it comes to messaging on voter ID. Messaging on voter ID. The American people believe that voter IDs are okay. We need to win the fight when it comes to voter expansion. And that means let's be the party that says, let's move elections from Tuesday to Saturdays. Let's be the party that says, let's get rid of voter registration.
Thank you, Ms. Greene.
Let's look at voter expansion in a way that is innovative.
Thank you.
Mr. Perez, the movement known as BDS encourages a boycott of divestment from and sanctions of Israel as long as it is in violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Should Democrats be supportive of BDS? And if not, what kind of nonviolent movement for Palestinian independence should the party support?
I don't support the BDS movement because I think you look at many of the things that have been said by that movement, and I think they've been very destructive. And they've rather than forging consensus, they've torn us apart, and that's not right. And what we need to do, whether it's the vexing question of Israel and the need for a two-state solution, the need to get both sides together so that we can have peace and long-term prosperity, or whether it's the issue of voter ID, or whether it's the issue of economic security. I think we need to make sure that we have people who are organizing, who are moving the ball forward. I don't think the BDS movement is moving the ball forward, plainly and simply.
Anybody else want to take that?
Mr. Buttigieg?
Of the many issues that the next DNC chair is going to face, for better or for worse, resolving the Middle East crisis is not going to be one of them. This job is about running elections and winning them for Democrats. And sometimes there are going to be issues where there's a diversity of opinion among Democrats, and that's okay. You know why? Because we're Democrats. And when we have those issues, we're going to support our Democrats no matter what. This is not a policy job. And I love policy. And there's a temptation to make this about policy. We're all passionate about policy or we wouldn't be here, but this is an organizing job. And the most important qualifications for this job is who can get out there and organize so that we can run and win the elections that are going to get us the majorities from dog catcher to the White House that we need so that our values are made good in the policy decisions that get made.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Harrison, Congressman Ellison has said that he would reinstate the ban on lobbyist contributions to the DNC. Would you?
Right now, to take away lobbyist money and lawyer money, it would probably be a hole of about $18 million in the DNC. Right now, there are state parties who have less than $50,000 cash on hand. And they, in 2 years, have to either defend one of 25 Democratic U.S. Senate seats or win a governorship. I don't see, with the Republicans in complete control of every aspect of our government, that we can single-handedly take money out of our coffers. I just don't see that. I don't see how we replace that $18 million when state parties right now are begging each of us to pledge that we will give them $25,000 a month, which is, when you add it all up, about $18 million. So the question is, where do we get those resources? I'm told that we are probably about $2 million in debt at the DNC right now. So the question is, where do we get those resources? When lobbyists or corporations give us any money, what are they going to get from the DNC? It's not like we have a vote in Congress. We can't determine any laws. So it must mean that they are committed to the vision of helping us recruit candidates, build a new bench, and all the like. And if they are committed to helping us get the majority back in governorships, in Congress, then bring it on, because I can use those dollars in South Carolina to train the next generation of young people who are running for office. I can use those dollars in South Carolina to register more voters. I can use those dollars in South Carolina to fight back against the extremists, Republicans, in our legislature and in our governor's houses. And so, I can't just single-handedly say, let's disarm and allow the Republicans to raise up all the money, and then we don't have anything. It's great to really get, and I want to increase small dollar fundraising, and that's really, really important. But right now, we need to get every dollar that we can so that we can go back, so that we can start working for the American people.
Congressman, I want to hear you respond to that.
Well, first of all, I want to say that there was a HuffPost article that I thought was truly unfair to Jaime Harrison. He is one of the best people I've ever met, has incredibly high integrity.
Thank you.
And I want y'all to know this man is awesome. I'm sorry that happened, but here's the real question. I think Jaime will probably agree with me on this. How do we rebuild that trust relationship with the voter so that they feel that the Democratic Party really is their party? Now, if I do become DNC chair, I'm not going to impose a policy on anybody. We're going to have a democratic process on how we arrive at funding the Democratic Party. We absolutely need money. And if anybody wants to get rid of any money we're getting, I want to talk to you about how we're going to replace it. but we're going to do whatever we do democratically. And if the body feels that we should not get corporate lobbyist money, then I will be among the first to say, yeah, that's what we're going to do. So now how are we going to replace it? But it will be a democratic process. And I also want to say that I do believe we should take support from our union friends because...
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Mr. Perez, please.
Go ahead.
You know, whenever you're, this is an important question, and I chose in my own campaign for DNC chair not to take money from lobbyists. That's a different question from the question that you asked. And I always think it's important when you're debating an issue of this seriousness to look into the doctrine of consequences, intended and unintended. And you know, the superdelegate question and this question are similar in that it's tempting to give a quick answer. And when you peel the onion and you talk to colleagues in the CBC, for instance, about the superdelegate issue, they have a very important perspective to add. And I have a friend who couldn't get into the government because he was a lobbyist. His client was the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. I know folks who were corporate lobbyists who deregistered and are now influential, but they're not lobbyists. And so this is a very complicated question, and I've talked to members, and they recognize the complexity of it. And so as we move forward, I think it's really important to study the doctrine of consequences, intended and unintended, with that North Star of this party will always be the party of the people.
Thank you. Mayor Buttigieg?
You know, there's always a temptation for silver bullets, and I think this is one of those things that sounds good, but when we had it, I didn't see the Democratic Party get any more progressive, and I didn't see it win any more elections. What I am concerned about is the bigger issue of money in elections. It's not going to happen just because one party unilaterally disarms in some way. We need actual, real reform, and if we can't get it through legislation, we got to go to the Constitution, and we can't be afraid of that. And the DNC can't stand in the way. Even though the DNC's job largely consists of gathering and then deploying resources to help Democrats run and win elections, we must not stand in the way of making sure that we have the real fundamental legislative reform so that we're all playing by the same rules and doing what it would actually take to get money out of politics.
Thank you, Mayor.
And Mayor, you could answer this question too. What is the temperature of DNC members on this question?
I think DNC members want to run and win elections. I think they get that. I mean, you know, we were in Phoenix together. I think everybody there vigorously agreed with the idea that we got to be ready to have real campaign finance reform. But it's got to be across the board. It's got to be something that's going to apply to all of us.
Director, you wanted to...
I think the most important kind of issue underneath this issue is access, right? So if we truly are talking to all of the people in our party and we're giving access to our leaders to everybody so that it has equity, then this becomes less of an issue. However, we're not doing that. We're doing a very poor job at it, and we have a lot of institutional issues that we need to fix, not just communication issues. So we need to take that on. I also think that because campaign finance is the #1 issue facing our democracy, we have to take a stand as a party, and we have to start somewhere.
Thank you. Ms. Greene?
The majority of the DNC members I've talked to do not want to do this, to answer your question. And I think, just as you said, this is the #1 issue, or one of the #1 issues facing us. We have to educate them. And we also have to prioritize what are the challenges we take on. What do we take on first? What do we take on 10th? What do we take on a year from now? So we cannot cut off our nose to spite our face at this time, 36 hours from this man being inaugurated. We have to be smart about the choices we make as an electoral institution. I think one of the most frustrating things and what compelled me to get into this race is the conversation about what the DNC is as an institution has been based on something that does not exist. And so to understand the institution from the inside, from the outside, and also as a big D Democrat, as a small d Democrat, that is really important. And what the DNC members, again, that I have talked to, they have a very specific understanding of the role that money plays in their life, state parties, what they are relying on. We have to hold that reality in check, and we also have to start to provide opportunities and information on how we innovate.
Thank you. Mr. Buckley?
I want to go back to what Keith said, because I think that fundamentally is the issue. And what Keith said was that it wasn't up to the chair to decide. And that's really where we got in a lot of trouble the last few years, is that so much of the policy of the DNC was decided by one person and his or her immediate staff. And the officers of the DNC weren't included. The executive committee of the DNC wasn't included. The members of the DNC were not included in this conversation. It is essential that no matter who wins this race, that we return democracy, small d, to the Democratic National Committee. We have a lot of people that want to be fully participants in this party, and it's critically important, and I am so proud that we are all going to be able to do that.
Thank you.
The only thing I would add is just also look at what we just did. We passed the most progressive platform in the history of this party. That's with corporate donors and lobbyists and everything else. We can do what we want to do, folks, without cutting folks off. And there are a lot of good, listen, I've lobbied. There are a lot of good people, a lot of Democrats who have lobbied, and they lobby for great issues. And it's important to let them feel that this is their party, too. They go into a voting booth and pull the curtain just like we all do as well. And so they should be able to contribute in their party. If there's a candidate that they like, they should be able to contribute to that person. I just think that we as Democrats, we get into this thing where we're sort of holier than thou. And so, well, if you do this type of thing, oh, God, you are the worst of the worst. No, I know bad congressmen. I know bad lawyers. I know bad doctors. I know you can go down the road. It's about doing what we need to do as a party.
Thank you, Chairman.
So, Congressman Ellison, let me just clarify your position. Your position is you're personally supportive of the ban, but if Democratic committee members were not, then you would be comfortable with that too.
Yes, but let me just add on this. You know, we got to have a conversation about how we make up the money, because we do need money to run the Democratic Party. And I will not impose this. If someone will have to bring forth a motion, I will make sure that it is seconded, that it is debated, that it is there are amendments to be offered, and if that is the will of our party, that is what we will do. But then that will also bring forth a lot of responsibility on everybody's shoulders, because we're now all going to have to go find that money that we just said we're not going to take anymore. Which I think, and I think it's. But I think it's incredibly important that we have the conversation. Mm-hmm. It is. We've got to at least talk about it, because people do have this sense that, you know, in D.C., you know, it's just the big puppet masters making all the calls. And if you want Miss McGillicuddy, who's willing to give her $10 every month, you got to be able to let her know that her money counts too.
We're getting down to the wire, so we're going to need to.
30 seconds.
I think that I heard a lot of how do we replace the money, and I just want to repeat this because I think it's so important. If we're fundamentally changing the Democratic Party, then people will come and the money will be replaced. We have to stop putting the money first and the people second. We need to start putting the people first, and the money will come.
Quick response.
If I can just respond, I do agree with that, but I agree absolutely, you're right. But we also cannot ignore the money conversation. That's got to be a part of the dialogue as well.
Related to this question, last week, two remarkable things happened. One, Donald Trump held a press conference and said that we should be negotiating drug prices with the pharmaceutical industry and that they're getting away with murder. The next day, 13 Democrats joined with Republicans to defeat a measure that would have allowed for Canadian reimportation of generic drugs. How does the Democratic Party get away from committing kind of these political suicidal acts?
Well, I actually have a piece of legislation that calls for drug reimportation. I carried that bill, introduced it, fought for it. I think it's good policy. But I don't think it's the role of the DNC chair to go to a Democrat and say, you voted wrong here, you voted wrong there. You know what? They have party leadership that will deal with that issue. The DNC chair's job is to get Democrats elected and to get Democrats involved. Now, I'm going to tell you something about politicians. They see the light when they feel the heat. If you guys get involved and tell them that you're not all right with that, I think some votes will start going the way you want them to go.
Mr. Perez.
When I was in local government, I sponsored a resolution making sure that our school teachers and firefighters could buy their maintenance meds from Canada. The FDA's in my district. When they told me this would be unsafe, show me the dead Canadians, I asked them. They never showed them to me. I'm still looking for the dead Canadians. But you know what, though? And it's the same thing. And the point that Keith makes is really important. You know, we had the same issue. We tried to help people saving for retirement. You know, when you go to get advice about how to invest your 401k or your IRA, you think that that person has a legal obligation to look out for your best interests. But guess what? She doesn't. He doesn't. They can put their own profit ahead of your self-interest. And the fiscal impact of this is in the tens of billions of dollars. I bring this up because, to get back to the first question, we've got to take the fight to Donald Trump on issues of economic security. They're going to try to undo this rule. They're going to try to undo the overtime rule. And we've got to take the fight to issues that are at the core of what it means to be middle class in this country.
Thank you.
The question here really is something that comes to life for anyone who's a state party chair, because we have to work with elected officials on these sorts of issues. Some of you may not know, but 30 years ago, I was one of the first openly gay state legislators ever elected in America. Don't cut my tongue. I was state party chair when marriage equality was coming before my legislature. My governor, Democratic governor, had promised not to support it. Now, I didn't publicly come out and start attacking him as a, somebody that obviously was very passionate and supportive of it. What I did was work behind the scenes. I worked with the Democrats in the House. I worked with the Democrats in the Senate. And then I sat down and had an amazing multi-hour-long conversation with my governor. And he, at the end of that conversation, he agreed that was the best thing to do to sign it, and now he considered it as one of the hallmarks of his 8 years as governor of the state of New Hampshire. That's what a good state party chair does. It's not about yelling at them or sending out press releases or sending people. It's having these conversations with our elected officials and being a good state party leader or a national party leader and saying, when you go to a legislator and they're saying, my God, I'm going to lose in my district, and you say, I will make sure you have the resources to get reelected if you take this honorable vote. And if you've got that sort of organization behind you, they're going to trust you and they're going to do the right thing.
Thank you.
Mr. Harrison and then Mr.
Guys, this was one of those, when I saw that article the next day, earlier that day, we had Cory Booker and a lot of the CBC members testify against Jeff Sessions, which was a big victory. And then that night we had this vote. And I woke up and I saw that Democrats were yelling at Democrats, and it sent chills down my spine. It is because in 2018, 25 Democrats are up in the United States Senate. 10 of them are in Trump states. 2 of the people who were there were the Montana senator and the North Dakota senator. If they lose their primary, if they lose, the Republicans get one step closer to 60 votes and Armageddon for this country. What I would have done is huddled all the Democrats up together and said, Wyden, Klobuchar, Sanders, let's come up with an amendment that all Democrats can support so that we don't go and start beating each other up. We've got to stop take our focus off of each other and out to Donald Trump and the Republicans.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, just really quick, because this question of affordability of care illustrates what I'm getting at, what I'm trying to get across when I say we got to talk not in terms of what happens here in Washington, but in people's lives. Let me tell you about my Thanksgiving day. Thanksgiving morning, by the way, I spent in a deer blind with my boyfriend's father. So how's that for a 2017 experience? But in the afternoon, we were sitting around the coffee table, and his mom showed me this tube of cream, about the size of a tube of toothpaste. Only it's not skin cream. Well, it is, but it's topical chemotherapy that her life depends on. It costs $2,000 a month. What is she supposed to do if they take away the ACA that she uses to pay for that? We got to be talking in those terms. 20 million is a big number, but it's just a number until we bring it back to the real lived experience of Americans. And when we do, we're going to win.
Thank you, Mr.
Our time's running out here, so to wrap things up, we want to get a 1-minute closing statements from everyone. We want to say thank you to everybody here for joining us. Chairman Buckley, if you want to start.
Thank you. Once again, I want to encourage you to go to rayfordnc.com. I talk a lot about these issues. We all have a phenomenal record that I think that we're all very proud of, but I am particularly proud of my 10 years as State Party Chair in New Hampshire and the past 8 years as head of the State Chairs Association, where my colleagues elected me, re-elected me, re-elected me, and re-elected me again. They did that because I'm a fighter for the grassroots, and that's what I'll do as the National Chair.
Thank you. Chairman Harrison?
I want to thank you guys for being here tonight with us and thank my colleagues for being up here on the stage. Listen, as I said from the start, we need a builder, we need an organizer, we need a visionary. When I came into the chairmanship of the South Carolina Democratic Party, we had very little in terms of infrastructure. We didn't have a bench. So I went out and I started to build one. We started the James E. Clyburn Political Fellowship, where we're training the next generation of candidates. We graduated our first class of 32 last September, and we now will start with our second class of 48. These are young people representing almost every county in our state. So again, it's not about talking about it, it's about doing it. And that's what we're doing in South Carolina. But it's also about rebuilding the trust between the party and the people. So on Inauguration Day, what will we be doing? Not watching Donald Trump, but doing community service projects through South Carolina Democrats Care all across the state of South Carolina. Because if the people trust us again, if they trust us again, then they'll vote for us again. And that is so powerful. So I want to thank you all for being here and really would love your support as the DNC chair.
Thank you. Ms. Greene?
I love listening to everyone up here. And as I sat and watched this field develop, I loved listening to Congressman Ellison, and I wanted him to stay in Congress. And I loved listening to Secretary Perez, and I think he will make a great governor one day. And Mayor Pete, my gosh, a U.S. Senate seat is in your future. Sally, you should be the executive director of the Democratic National Committee because your ideas about old power and new power need to be on the table. These two state party chairs, first, this man is a future congressman. Thank goodness. You should be going all around the country, Ray, doing the training for state party chairs that are out there. But I think each of us are uniquely positioned. And I entered this race because I am someone who has succeeded on the national level as an organizer. I am someone who has been a fierce messenger for our policies and our values. I am someone who had to organize my way into this debate, and I am embracing the joy of rebuilding our party from a place of experience. I am embracing the joy in the same way that women are rising up, and I think we are all uniquely positioned to fight Donald Trump. This is the position we need right now, an organizer and a messenger.
Thank you.
Mr. Perez?
This is a big job. It's a big deal, because the consequences are so great on Friday when Donald Trump takes office. This is also a turnaround job, because we've got to change the culture of the Democratic Party. We've got to connect with voters. We've got to connect with members. We've got to connect with America in every single zip code in America. That's what I've done throughout my career at the Department of Labor, at the Department of Justice, in local government, in state government. I've been taking organizations that have a critical mission, but aren't necessarily firing on all cylinders, and helping them to realize their highest and best talents. And that's what we need at the department, at the DNC. We need somebody who is a proven progressive, who gets results, who can take the fight to Donald Trump, who can talk to every stakeholder in this party, who can go to every zip code and communicate that message of opportunity and inclusion, and make sure that all 57 states, the states and the territories, are firing on all cylinders. And that's what I hope to do, and I would welcome the support as we move forward. Thank you.
Congressman?
Let me thank everybody who's here tonight and my fellow candidates. You guys are awesome. I agree. Thank Huffington Post. Hey, man, you know, seriously, we've got to protect Social Security. We've got to protect people's health care, the Affordable Care Act. In order to do it, we got to win elections. 954 or so state legislators we've lost. Dozens of governors. We got to win elections. I've been able to win elections in Minnesota by increasing turnout dramatically. I used to have the lowest, now I have the highest turnout in the state of Minnesota, and have gotten lots of Democrats elected, including I've helped get Governor Mark Dayton elected. helped get Amy Klobuchar and Al Franken elected. Of course, it was all of us who did it, defeated nasty ballot measures that try to interfere with people's right to marry and photo ID. All I want to do is help Democrats all over the country get elected by increasing voter turnout, by turning on during the off year, grassroots organizations, small dollar, and you know DNC chair can do it without the grassroots, and that's why I'm calling on you to get involved, get engaged, then we're going to win. Thank you.
Director Boynton-Brown.
We have a rare opportunity in front of us to re-envision the Democratic Party and the DNC, and to me they're two different, separate, distinct things, because the party is all of you and the 57 state parties who are out in our communities. And it is so important that we build a DNC that is resilient and innovative and prepared for the 21st century. The DNC structure that we have is largely still a 19th century structure, and we're losing races because of it. We have to be an organization that works with the people of America and our party to give them the power back. I focus on power because it is the thing that I hear from everyday Americans that I talk to all over our country that they don't have. In fact, 50% of America didn't even take the power that they're given by our founding fathers to vote. And that, to me, is the saddest thing possible. The Democratic Party has to be in a place where the DNC is supporting, taking on that challenge and saving our democracy.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being able to be here. Even in a discussion this substantive, we only scratched the surface. So I do hope you'll check out my platform at PeteForDNC.com for some of our more specific and innovative ideas. When people are sizing you up for the first time, I know they try to fix you in some kind of category or place you on a spectrum. And it's not going to compute for me. I am a church-going, antique gun collecting, millennial, red state Episcopalian, left-handed mayor who's also a war veteran. I just don't fit in categories comfortably. But if there was one category I wanted people to place me in, it would be that of somebody who can turn things around. Within days of my getting into the race for South Bend mayor, about 6 years ago, Newsweek had us on a list of 10 American dying cities. Today, we've tackled over 1,000 vacant and abandoned properties. We are experiencing our fastest population growth in a generation. I know how to get stuff done. And that is exactly what I want to do for the party. And that's why of all the great people you saw up here, I'm hoping you will consider me as the one best positioned to deliver the fresh start that our party needs. Thank you.
That's all we have time for tonight. Thank you for participating. There is a lot of agreement, but I think some really interesting discussions about where to take the party forward. We'll be watching to see what happens when the chair vote takes place next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
It was